object-oriented programming language like Python or Java? Raise your hands. That's quite a lot of you. How many of you like to program in an object-oriented programming language? Okay, I'm going to pretend all of you raise your hands, because object-oriented programming languages are great, and they're amazing. And there's a good reason for why we love them in software engineering. And one of those reasons is they allow us to split different modules to be responsible for themselves, right? Now, we all love object-oriented programming, but evidently the founder of JavaScript did not. So, when he created JavaScript a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, we didn't actually have objects or classes in JavaScript. Now, as a web programmer, people were like, wait a sec, I want classes too, right? So, eventually, when they pushed out the newest version of JavaScript, ES6, which Corey talked about a little bit in our last lecture, they added classes, which is great, and everyone was happy. Except, we ran into a slight issue, and that issue comes up in a piece of code like this. And you guys might have seen it before. We actually talked briefly about this piece of code last week when we were covering the differences between our ambiguous this. You guys remember this? Remember that? It was in your MongoDB lecture. And in particular, we're going to talk about the differences between the two thises in JavaScript and hopefully clear up some of the confusion you guys have. So, first of all, let's take a look at this piece of code. The lines that we care about are circled in red. There is a new comment submit.add event listener. Right, so what that does is it adds an event listener to this particular HTML element called new comment submit. And in the callback to that event listener, we have this, this.get attribute story ID. Right? Cool. Now in this case, if you guys remember what I said last week, the this refers to the new comment submit. Right? Because we're adding an event listener, and the event listener is bound to this guy. Right? So this refers to this guy. Cool. Everybody's like, yeah, all right, we're happy. This is good, right? All right. So what about if we have a class, right? So this is what a class looks like in JavaScript. It's pretty similar to how you define classes in other languages, right? You have a constructor and then some class methods, right? So let's say we have one called cool method. Nice. And let's say later inside this class, we run into this code right here, right? So again, you're adding another event listener, and inside the event listener, you refer to this.cool method. All right, so now, what does this refer to? Right. So for those of you that use Python or Java, you know that self or this usually refers to yourself, like the current class here, right? The object. And you can call class methods on that keyword. But in JavaScript, remember, it sometimes refers to this HTML element that we're calling the event listener on, right? So now we're confused and we're like, well, which one does it refer to? And the people in JavaScript over in HQ were like, okay, you know what? We're just going to make it refer to the HTML element. Which kind of sucks, because now we don't have a this for referring to yourself, right? So how we deal with this, how we deal with the problem, is we get what we call arrow functions, and we talked very briefly about that this morning, but it's just a new way of constructing a function, right? So instead of just doing cool method parentheses, we set cool method equal to the parentheses, then we add an arrow, and then everything else is the same. And this is not that different from defining it as function. We're just automatically saying that, in this function, this refers to the class. Right? So the traditional version of this. Right? And that's all it does. That's all it does. So if you run into this issue, right, just don't define your functions like this, and you'll functions like what's on the board, and you'll probably be okay, right? Now, you might be like, Alex, I didn't understand a single thing you just said, and that's totally okay, right? So if you run into this issue, come to office hours, we'll help you deal with it. This is kind of one of those quirks of JavaScript, right? But it's okay. We'll get through it together. All right, awesome. Are there any questions on that? Any questions? Everybody understand it? Thumbs up? Everybody thumbs up? All right, that's good to hear. Good to hear. Awesome. Okay, so today we're going into a front-end framework called React.js. And we're going to think about how we use different modules to help us program in a way that makes more sense and is easier. But first, before we do that, who here has used Facebook? Or Airbnb? Or Instagram? Right? Now, besides being very, very sophisticated web apps, that are prevalent in our current world, these three software applications have one thing in common, and that is that they all use React as their primary front-end framework. And the list doesn't stop there. It goes on. You have many, 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 many companies that use React. And today, I'm going to try to explain to you why React is taking over the front-end frameworks of all the software companies, right? And why you, as an aspiring web developer, should care. Because since a lot of companies use React, having this as one of your skills will help you a lot. So, why do we use React.js? Well, first of all, what is it? React, turns out, as we just said, is just a front-end JavaScript library that helps us build user interfaces. That's all it does. But it helps us build it in a way that makes more sense. And it helps us in three very large ways. Now, the first way is that React is very fast. And for you guys, when you're building your web apps this IAP, that might not mean as much because, you know, they're smaller, right? You're building it in a month. But for a company like Facebook, or Instagram, or Instacart, or General.io, I don't know, you're gonna care a lot more about, you know, your latency. And when people load your page, you want it to load quickly, right? And React helps us a lot with that. Now, the other two reasons are better reasons for you to care. And the first, that React forces your code to be what's called modular. What modularity means in this case is that React splits your web app into separate, what are called components. And we talked about this earlier with Ryan, right? We talked about how we split our app into different little parts, and it helps us kind of write our apps in a better way, right? And React helps us do that by forcing different components to take care of themselves. And we'll get into that in a little bit. The last reason is that React forces your code to be readable. And now you guys are all working in teams, right? Or some of you are working in teams. Let's say that your teammate doesn't know how to write code, right? Or, they're like me, and they write really bad code. Or they're like Aaron Simpson, they write really bad code. He's not here, so I can say it. So, now, what React does is it makes your components very readable. So once you see a React component, you know exactly what it does, why it does it, and where it should go. And this makes it very easy for you as a teammate to debug your friend's code and help them get back on the right track. Cool. So we're gonna do some exercises in thinking in React and how we do modular thinking. So first, let's look up on the board. We see a very nice user interface here. Do you guys know what this is? Instagram. Yeah, in particular the Instagram web app. All right. So Google actually, but you know, it's good. It's good. It looks good. Okay. So let's see. What kind of components or different modules do we have going on here? You can see this page is kind of divided, right? There's clear divisions. So where are the divisions? Someone want to tell me? What do you guys see? Yeah, you see a feed, right? There's an idea of this like little Pikachu, right? And you can scroll, and there's like more pictures that come up. That's great. What else do we have? Yes? Yes, we have a nav bar at the very top. You guys all see that? Last one. Yes? Yeah, you have this like sidebar thingamabob going on over here. So 3 separate parts. And what React does, it says we're going to define 3 components for each of these guys. And each one is going to take care of itself. So there's no cross-pollination of logic, right? And you can draw out a component tree for this particular app. So above it, at the very top, the parent of everyone is just called app. Make sense? And below that, we have 3 large chunks. We have a nav bar, we have a feed, and we have a sidebar. And inside feed, we have like a post, and inside a post, maybe there's like a picture, and like more comments and stuff, right? There's more and more posts. And we see there's like a hierarchical structure, right? which is good for us. So let's try to dive more into this idea of reactive thinking with a real world example. So we're going to pull out of this whole idea of software and go into, we're going to go into like abstract sense. Okay, so let's think about how we can model the following cards in React. Right, so who here has played poker before? It's okay if you haven't, don't worry about it. This here is what we call a 2-pair. Right? Because we have a pair of aces and a pair of kings in this set of icons. Right? This is like a triplet because we have 3 eights. This is a flush because they're all hearts. But you know, that's not that important. What we really care about here is how can we model this in components. Right? What do we have? What separate components do we have? Anyone want to give a guess? What do you guys see right on the board? Yes?
Suits and numbers?
Yeah, you see suits and numbers, right? That's exactly right. Each card has its own suit and its own number. The other cards don't care about anyone else's suits and numbers, right? They don't care about themselves. That's very good, right? And above all the cards, we have an idea of a hand, right? So this one is a flush, right? This one is, they're triplets. This one is two pair, right? So we can model our component tree like this. We have a hand, and below that are 5 cards. Make sense, everybody? It's pretty intuitive, right? Okay, so the next question is, what happens in terms of displaying this, right? When we see, let's use this example, right? When we see this, what makes this hand different from other hands? We already have one thing, right? The suits and the cards. What's the last thing that makes this one, what is the characteristic of it that makes it different from other hands? I'll give you a hint, it's written on the screen. Right, what is it? Yeah, the fact that they're triplets, right? That's important. This is a characteristic of this particular hand. And that's important to us, right? And these characteristics are what makes the user interface show us certain things, right? So in this case, because they're triplets, we show that it's triplets. And because this one is of suits clubs, we show that there are clubs here, right? And we call these things, these characteristics, properties and states. Okay. So a component will render based on its own properties and its own state. These two things decide what it will ultimately look like, right? So in this case, we already went over this exercise, right? What do you guys see? You see some numbers, right? 8s and 10s and aces, right? And then we had the idea that it's a triplet, right? So that's also a characteristic. That's a state or a property. So let's dive into the difference between these two, because it can be confusing, right? You're like, what is the difference between a state and a property? Well, states are owned solely by the component that they're defined in. Okay? So if I have a state, say I'm a React component, right? And the state, I have a state that my name is Alex. Sure, right? That means no one else is allowed to directly change that. Right? So Reply can't come to me and be like, your name is no longer Alex. Sorry. Right? I get to decide that, right? And because that's one of my characteristics. That's my state. Right? So you can't directly edit another's component state from another component. Only that component is allowed to edit its own state. And this means that we have an idea of modularity, right? Each component is responsible for itself. So each card takes care of itself. Each hand takes care of itself. And that means you don't have logic components flying all over the place, right? You don't have random JavaScript files that are like defining different things. Each component takes care of itself. And you can see there's a hierarchy, right? So hand is the parent of all the cards because the hand takes care of the cards, right? So yeah, so for example, a state of the hand is that they're triplets. Right? That makes sense, right? The hand is defined by the fact that it is, in fact, a hand of triplets. Okay, so you might ask, what is the last characteristic that we talked about, right? We talked about the idea of suits and numbers. And so where does that go? Well, and that's a great question. But for now, let's just focus on solely numbers, right? So in this case, we have ace, 10, 8, 8, and 8. Okay? So let's start with suit just for simplicity. Everybody follow so far? Yeah, we're good? Okay. So the question is that a state? Well, it is a state of the hand, and what we do is we pass it as a property down into the cards. Now, that sounds confusing. We're going to go very slowly into it. The difference between a state and a property is that a state lives inside a component, right? We just talked about this. Spent like 30 seconds talking about how a state lives in the component. Properties are passed. You pass properties downwards from your parents. So you learn about what you are from your parent, right? So in this case, that particular card over here, it learns that it's an ace from the hand, right? So the hand's like, hey, you're an ace. And the guy's like, okay, and renders an ace. Right? And it's like, good, cool. Right, and important, properties can only be passed downwards. Which way do properties pass? Properties pass downwards. Don't ever pass properties up. And this is really good for us. And the reason is if you pass properties up, right, then the tree gets larger. So by only passing properties downwards, we're limiting the scope of where the properties can be, right? So in this case, this ace, 10, 8, and 8, it lives inside hand, and it will only touch descendants of hand, right? If you have another hand flying around somewhere, it won't care, and it doesn't need to know that this hand has ace 10, 8, and 8. You don't need to know. So this, again, imposes modularity on our code, which is really cool. So, yes, we have these properties of ace, 10, 8, 8, and 8 passed down into our cards. And some of you might be like, why isn't ace, 10, 8, 8, and 8 a state of the card? Is everyone wondering that? Seems reasonable, right? It could be a state of the card. And that's a very, very good question. And that's where the confusing part of React characteristics come into play, right? What's a state, what's a component, or what's a state, what's a property? Hard to decide, right? But in this case, we know for sure that the state, well, first of all, the state triplets, right? That has to live in the hand. Everybody understand why? Because, like, having a card have a state triplets means nothing to the rest of the cards. And since they're siblings and not children of it, they can't access that state, right? So the hand has to have that state triplets. We're all clear on that, right? Everybody understand that? Thumbs up? Okay, cool. But card is like, yeah, you know, I'm an ace, right? Why do other people care about the fact that I'm an ace? Well, it turns out that hand does care. Why does hand care? Because it needs to know that you're a triplet, right? It needs to know that I have 3 8s in me, right? So that leads to us to our first rule. Oh, we're talking about this. Our first rule is that a state needs to live at least as high as the parent component to everyone that uses it, right? So in this case, hand actually uses the fact that you need ace 10, 8, 8, 8 to make a triplet, right? So it needs to know those cards. Therefore, state of the cards has to live in the hand. Does everybody understand this? Is everybody following me? If you're not following me, please ask questions. This part is very confusing, and it's kind of the essence of React, is where we put these states and properties to help us program, right? Cool. So, the rule here, make states stay, make props pass. Remember, states live inside the component, and props pass which way? Downwards. Downwards. Very good. Excellent. Yeah, downwards. Okay, so next we're going to look at a very brief example. So we're pulling back from the abstract world of cards and thinking of the real world in React, and we're actually going to talk user interfaces now. So Airbnb does use React. You can see you have a nice little carousel here. It shows some key pictures. Nice, you know, very nice. And we can model this particular component as a React component, right? So can anyone tell me, what do we see here? What are the different components? Any thoughts?
Box.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. I heard something.
No, say it louder.
Say it louder.
Say it louder.
Say it louder. Let's hear it. You got it.
She said box.
Box, yeah, you're exactly right. There's a big, you're right, there's a box. And the great thing about React is, hey, like, if there's a box there, we can use that as a component, right? Right? It's amazing. Yeah, there's a box that kind of like holds everything together, right? Yeah, and what's inside the box? What's inside the box? Yeah.
Picture.
A picture. Yeah, there's a picture in the box, right? And you guys might have missed it, but what are on the sides? What are the sides here? What do you guys see?
Arrows.
Arrows. Yeah, there's arrows there, right? Yeah, so these are all React components. Okay, which one's the parent? Right? The box. The box is the parent, right? The box takes care of the image and of the arrows. Cool. We're in a place. So, right, so now you have this idea of an upper level of app, right? We start all our apps with the high level component of app. And under that, there's like a card, right? Same thing as box. Sure, whatever. Box, card, and manage model. So, under the card, there is an image body, right, that holds some image, and there's 2 arrow buttons. So what are the characteristics here? What is the state? Does anyone think of the state? What is changing? Ah! Sorry. What's changing? Picture. Yeah, the picture is changing, right? You guys go back. You can see when you click the arrow button, the picture changes, right? And it goes. That's excellent. Yeah. So the question is, well, is that a state? Or is that a property? And where does that live? Where does the image live? So, question, does it live in the arrow button? No. Why can't it live in the arrow button? Because then the image body can't access it, right? It's not below. What do you think? Where does the image live?
It exists as a state in the card and it has to be property.
Yes, that's exactly right. It exists as a state in card and is passed downwards as a property into image body. And you might ask, Alex, why can't we just put it as a state in image body? Well, the arrow buttons also need to be able to change that state. When you click an arrow button, what happens? The image moves, right? It changes to a new image, right? If the state of the image was just a state in image body, arrow button can't access that anymore because it's not descendant, right? Helps pass downwards, right? So it sits as a state in cart. And you'll be asking, what is this change image shenanigans that are going on, right? Well, the question is, if we want to change the state of a parent, right? Remember, states live in the component that they're made in, right? So we can't change it directly, but we can cheat. We can pass a change image function as a property downwards into arrow button. So card.changeImage is not a function of arrow button, it's actually a function of card. And we pass that function downwards, and now arrow button can indirectly change the state of card, which then changes the state of the property of image body, which makes image body render something different, right? And React can take care of all that for us. So again, there's like this modularization, right? So now arrow button, all it's responsible for is just changing that state. And that's good for us. That's good. It's limiting skill. That's great. So let's talk about a particular component. It's a nice component. All right, so let's see. What do we got going on here? We got a Facebook post, right? You guys are all familiar with this. In particular, what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in on this particular comment. Okay, so what is a ruinator? A question that plagues me at night. But let's try to figure it out, right? Or not figure out what a ruinator is, but let's figure out what the component structure of this app is right now, right? So what do you guys see? Again, what do you see?
A story.
You see a story, yeah, you see like a post, right? Or whatever this is. Sure, story post, whatever. What else do you guys see?
Comments.
Comments! Yeah, I see a lot of comments, right? What's inside each comment?
Text.
Text, there's some text going on, there's a name, what else?
Reaction.
Yeah, there's like a like thingamabob, right? Whether or not you liked it. So these are all different like user interface choices, right? Things that could be there or could not be there. And we model all those in our React characteristics, states or properties, right? So yeah, I got a story going on, and inside there's a bunch of comments, right? And they all sit. So, up here, the story holds a state of all the comments below it, all of its content, right? So it's text. So, in this particular example, right, the post, 5 year ruined my life, holds on to the state of all the comments below it. And then inside each comment is there's a state about whether or not it's been liked. Everybody follow so far this component structure? Seems good? Cool. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to dive in and see how we write out components in React.js. And you guys will see that it's very simple and very intuitive. So, there are 3 functions you guys see on the board. Constructor, component did mount, and render. Okay? And we're going to talk about these 3 individually and why they're important. So first, constructor. The constructor is called when the component is created. Definition of constructor, right? Kind of makes the component. And inside this constructor, what we do is we initialize a state. Remember, the state lives in the component, right? So we initialize it in the constructor and it kind of stays there. Component did mount is called when the component appears. All right, so question. Yeah, I see a lot of confused looks. They're like, what is the difference, right? And that's a really good question. So the difference between when a component appears and when it's created is that when a component is created, it doesn't appear on the screen yet, right? Chrome needs time to make it show up, right? All the parents need to be there before it appears on the screen, right? So there's a slight delay between when we construct the component and when it actually appears on our screen. And component did mount is called once we can see it on our screen, right? Those of you that like jQuery and stuff, there's like an onload. It's like a similar thing. So basically, when the component appears in Chrome for you. And what we do here is we make any request to the server, right? So you guys know some server requests, right? Like /API/whomI /API/post stories, right? You guys triggered, yeah. So yeah, you can make any of those requests in this particular block, right? And finally, render. Render is saying, what does appearing even mean, right? And what this function does is it returns some HTML for us that defines exactly what this component should look like. And don't worry, we'll dive into it. So, first, let's talk about constructor. So what do we do in constructor? We initialize the
Component.
state. Right? We initialize the state, right? Yeah. Silence worries me. You guys good? Initialize the state? Yeah, alright, so that's good. Alright, so in the constructor we initialize the state, right? Which is different from properties, state, this is the component, right? And we're gonna set that state. So when a Facebook comment is first created, we set is like to false. Just like default. Right? Makes sense. And then in render, we're gonna return some HTML. So we see here, oh look, we have a cool post, right? And inside this cool post, there is some content, right? So in this case, this content, it would just be a, like, what is a ruinator? Okay, that was our content, right? And you might see, like, there's this idea of this.props. Anyone guess what this.props are? Properties. Yeah, there are properties. And that's super cool. Because we can just insert our properties into our render function, just like that. And they're going to show up. Right? This is really good for us because it allows us to just display them right there. Cool. And we maybe add some styles and stuff to make it look good, but I'm too lazy to add that. So, what about component did map? So what goes on there? So in here, remember we make server requests, right? So one thing we're going to request is, are we liked? Right? Get if liked from server. This is just a dummy method I made up. Right? Let's just assume the return is true if you're liked and false if you're not. Right? And what it's going to do is it's going to set the state of is liked to true only if you're being liked. Everybody follow so far? Okay. So now in render, what we can actually do is we can say, hey, is our state liked? If it is, let's display this. If it's not, let's display this. And that's all defined for us, right? You look at this code and you immediately understand it. You say, look, if we're liked, if that's true, our div looks like this. If otherwise, if our thing is not liked, then it looks like this. Magic, right? It's beautiful. You look at this code and you get it, right? And that's what we're all about in the end. Are there any questions so far about this code? Because I know it can be a little fast, right? The syntax and stuff. Any questions? Any questions on the doc? We doing good? No questions on the doc? Yes, we're fine.
So you have like HTML in
Ooh. Yeah. We have HTML and JavaScript. That's weird, isn't it? It's weird, but it's also great. Because that means we can mix our logic and what we see. Right? Because JavaScript is like the logic behind what we see. And HTML is like what we actually see. Right? And now it's all stuck in one component. Right? So everything that has to do with that component lives in that component. And what you guys see is that when we return, we put these parens here. Right? And that means, hey, we're moving from JavaScript React, and we're moving down into HTML. Okay? So all this can be HTML. So you need the parentheses there to tell us that we're going into HTML. And then these curly braces tell us we're going back into JavaScript. Okay? So every time you have JavaScript inside your HTML, which is useful, you enclose it in curly braces. And every time you have HTML in your React, most likely in render, right? You're going to enclose it in parentheses. That's a great question. Are there any other questions? Cool. People are seem to be. Let's get a poll. Who's give me a thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. How we're doing right now. Thumbs middle, thumbs up, mostly up. Okay, things are good. Oh wow, this is great. Excellent. Okay, we're gonna move on for now. Don't worry. We're gonna get into more examples in a bit, and hopefully it'll all clear out. So yeah, just like we said, right? Whenever it's liked, we're gonna display the cool post while this post is liked. Otherwise, we don't. Cool stuff. And this is what our entire component looks like. And you might be like, Alex, this is cool and all, but like, how do I actually put this somewhere, right? It's kind of just a JavaScript file floating in space right now. Well, what we can do is, all we have to do is write out this line, right? Comment, and then content equals what's a ruinator. And we can stick that in any render function, anywhere in our project, and it'll render a comment, okay? It'll render a comment right there. And the reason is because this class is called comment, right? So all we do is we just stick it in here. And what is this? What is this chunk? It's a content, right? And is that a state or a property? Property. Property because we're passing it. Which way? Down. We're passing it down, right? Right, exactly. So whenever you want to insert properties, pass them down, all you have to do is stick it into your HTML tag like this, right? And you, again, put this anywhere in your project, in any render function, and it'll render the comment right there. Good stuff. So now let's see an example of this, right? So this is what, say we look at the next level up, the next post, right? And or the next component upwards, right? Remember, we talked about how the parent is post and it has a bunch of common children, right? So this is what we mean, right? So there's a bunch of comments. So what's Aruna here? You, haha. I feel pretty damn confident at 10. But did you write it in React.js or not? Right? So that reflects these 4 comments, right? And all you have to do is declare them. All you have to do is stick them in, and they show up, and it's amazing. Right? And again, this content, what is it? A prop. It's a prop. Passing props down. Excellent. Right? So this is like a tree that goes all the way up, and you just declare your React components and your parents, and they'll render in the children. Right? Render as children. Questions? Are you guys still with me? Again, thumbs. Yes. Shannon, what is your question?
Is comment a keyword? What is it?
Great question. Oh, I love these questions. Wow, great job, guys. So, comment is not a keyword. The reason why we use it is because we define this class as comment. So make these classes, right, these components, and you name them something. So I could have called this like cool comment, right? And then over here, I just need to put a cool comment instead. It's just a class. Great question. Okay. So, but if you guys saw here, this content's like actually in text, right? But remember, earlier we decided that the content of the comments was actually a state, right? It's a state that's held in post. So in reality, it's actually going to look more like this, right? Because it's going to look at the state of the post and figure out its comments and stick it in, right? So again, this is the state in post. Right? So this is equivalent to what you see here, except now we're just using the states, right? Because remember, this is held in post. The state lives in post, right? Any questions on that? Still good? Cool. We good? Okay. All right. So now what we're gonna do is very exciting. We're actually gonna build our own React app, and it's gonna be amazing. And Shannon's gonna lead it, and she looks super embarrassed, but it's gonna be awesome. But first, before we do that, remember. We're good software engineers here, right? So let's design the component hierarchy first. And before we do all that, I'm going to show you guys what we're going to do. Why are you laughing? It's not even that funny. Oh, okay. Must be something uncomfortable. All right, I'll see you later. Okay, whatever. I'm just going to ignore that. Okay, so if you look up here, this is what I'm building. Okay, so it's hello world in React, and there's 3 greetings up here, and every time you press the D key, the exclamation mark and reappear. It's pretty cool. It's really awesome. All right, so so you're gonna learn how to build that. So let's go back. What is the component structure of this app right here? Spoilers, it's pretty simple. Right? So what's the component structure? What do we have at the top level? App. Very good. We have app at the very top level. Right? What about what's under app? Yeah, some text. Right? Let's call them greetings. Right, so how many greetings do we have? We have 3 greetings, right? There's an app, and below it there's 3 greetings. Oh, I'm on my presentation. Alright, right, so, right, this is what we have, right? We have a hello world component tree, and we have 3 greetings. Now question, what are the characteristics that you guys saw on the page? What do we have? Someone up there. Someone up over there in this upper section. What do you guys have? What do you guys see up there in that app? Anything? What did you see? Did I hear text?
She said text.
She said text. Yeah. You guys saw text. Great. Right, yeah, you guys saw text. So, question: where does the text live? So, remember, the golden rule is that it needs to live at least as high as greet. Right? It needs to live at least as high as greet. So in this case, we put it in app. Right? So all of our, wait, it's an app, right? That's not, yeah, it is. Wait, so your state of the text, it lives in app. Okay. What else did you guys see? What happened when I pressed the D key? Yeah, exclamation marks showed up, right? And that exclamation mark is showing. Right? And in this case, we keep that as a state in Greek. Right? So this Greek has a state of, wait, no, JK, is it an app? Is excited.
Yeah.
Oh, JK, it's in app. Right, remember, it has to be at least as high as Greek, right? So we could put it in Greek, we put it in app in this case, right? So, and we pass it down as a property. I'm glad no one said down. Right, so you pass it down as a property. Now, we're actually going to go back together, and Shannon is going to code this up, so I'm going to pass it over to her. Oh, thank you so much. Oh, I just couldn't use it. Angry mom?
Yeah.
You guys called me an angry mom? Angry mom? I mean, I'll take it. Oh, I am angry mom. Dude. Yeah. Oh, yeah, so you're on this one, right? Wait, Shannon. All right, I'm going to figure this out, guys. Send to left check.
Yeah.
Oh. You got it. You got it.
Oh, okay.
Wait for him to say that. All right, you guys are going to have fun.
Hey guys, real quick, so if you already noticed, we started doing it during this lecture, but we're going to try to answer questions a little less on the doc and try to forward them to the lecturers because our lecturers are such nice people, and we thought that it would be better for everyone if most of the questions were answered to everyone. We highly recommend, since our lecturers are so friendly and not angry moms, we thought it would be great if we want to encourage you guys to raise your hands and just ask away. But we still have the doc. If you're too shy or embarrassed to ask a question, you can anonymously post it there. Just note that we will likely we will answer less of them on the doc and try to forward them to our lecturers so they can just answer it out loud. This is also useful for the lecture videos, so later when people are watching this, they get those questions answered as well. Does anyone understand that? If people have feedback on this, see how it works today, see how it works on tomorrow. If you don't like it, just tell us in the feedback form and we'll probably maybe change it back. But this is also to get you guys to be a little more social. That's good. Yeah, alright, okay. Back into Shannon.
Okay, hi guys, I'm Shannon. If you've ever wanted to learn how to build such a cool app, you're in luck. I'll show you today. So, workshop time. You'll all need your laptops for this. So I want you guys to go here, to step 0, and go into that directory. Do not forget to npm install. If you don't npm install, you'll be kind of sad. So do it. If everyone can look up when they're done. Cool. All right. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to get a little more familiar with the folder structure because this is all very new. So I want you to open up all this code in your text editor, or whatever you want, and let's open up this component folder right here, and you'll find that in source. So do that now, and look up when you're done. Okay, cool. So as Alex explained earlier, app will be the parent of all our React components. In our case, we only have 3 Greek components as the children. And let's now open up source index.js. So I'm going to explain what this file does. This is a connector between React and the HTML. If you notice, in this file, you have something called document.getElementById root. And we'll see later what that root is now by opening up index.html in the dist folder. So let's do that now. So if you notice, in the HTML folder, we have, it's very bare bones. There's really nothing inside it except for one thing, a div with the ID defined as root. And as you can tell earlier in index.js, we had something called getElementById root, and that's exactly what basically, that's where all your React code gets translated to and goes in there. So now that we have like a good high-level overview of what our folder looks like, we're going to begin by writing our first component. So let's all go to app.js. And if you notice, we had 3 greetings. Can someone give me any random greeting?
IAP.
Very good. Alright, we're going to do this together. I'm going to write the first one with you. And I want you to fill in the other 2 with your neighbors or your partner. With any random greeting of your choice. No judgment. Alright. So.
Hey, Shannon.
Hi.
What does the Cloudflare link to battle.js mean in index.html?
The Cloudflare? Where? Here?
A link to battle.js.
Where?
I don't know.
It's that
You might have checked out later branch. We'll
Yeah.
cover Babel in a second.
Yeah.
It's good.
Okay. So now we're in app. And if you remember how we included a component, first, app has no idea what greet is yet, so we have to import it. And if you can see here, it's in the same folder as components. So what we're going to do together, import greet from the directions from greet. Cool. And the reason we're going to do that is because we export default greet in that file. Alright. Now I'm going to write the first component here. So we want to pass down a prop telling it the greeting, the text. And someone said IAP, so let's do that right now. And it's a string, so we can do, here we go. Alright. Now fill in the other 2 with the people around you.
Hey Shannon,
Hi.
what does super mean?
Super. Okay.
Okay.
Alright. Super. You remember how we pass down props? We have to include that. It's just like any of your functions when you're grabbing that initializes the props. That's why later on we were allowed to do this.props.something to access it because we called super here.
So what super does under the hood actually is it calls the constructor of your parent component. And this is because you can't really have an egg without a chicken.
Yeah.
Right? So you need to get the chicken first and then get the
But
egg.
that was terrible.
Sorry. You know what I mean. So it calls the parent constructor, so it constructs the parent, and then the child can be constructed after that.
Okay. Now let's all go to greet.js. So greet right now returns null. And if you remember previously, we passed down some props, with a field called text. And we have to render this text that we passed down somehow. So does anyone remember how to access the props we just talked about? So, anyone?
This.props.
Good. Great. So here's the thing. So in return, the first thing we have to do, it expects it to return one single element. So it's good practice to always return a huge, wrap a div around whatever you're returning. Let's all do that. Okay.
Hey Shannon, why is Greek being used with text? Well, in my example, comment used content as a prompt.
Okay. We can give whatever props we pass down any name we want. I could have called it text. I could have called it content. And in Greek, I can access it with the field name I gave it. So if I called it content in app, I would access that with this.props.content. If I give the name text, I would access it with this.props.text. And that's exactly what I'm doing now. And remember, anything that's not HTML has to be wrapped in curly braces. So, this.props.text. So let's fill that in now. Okay. Cool. So now you might be wondering, how do I run my code? How do I see the changes I made? You can't just open up index.html right now without doing anything. So I'll show you. So this is the working version. So, can you get the next slide, Andrew? Yeah. So, in your terminal, run npx webpack. That's not a typo, it's npx, not npm. After you run this command, now you can open index.html and you should be able to see all three of your greetings rendered on that page. I forgot to mention, in app.js you also have to wrap the whole thing in a div. That was my bad. So if you're having trouble compiling that, make sure you wrap whatever you're planning in a div. And Facebook, yes. Oh. Can you get a show of hands, like thumbs up, thumbs down if you guys got that to work?
Shannon, can you show the code again, please?
Yes.
Can you zoom in on the terminal? Wait a second.
What?
Can you put code on applet on the terminal you have and zoom in on the terminal?
Sure.
Oh, beautiful.
Got it?
More zoom.
Huh?
Where's
More
it?
zoom? Good? Nice. I'm sorry. Okay. Alright. So, say I want to make a change in my text. Say I actually wanted to say, Alex, and add his name at the end.
Oh no. Excuse me.
Alright. You notice that when we refresh this, nothing happens. That's the reason because we have to run npx webpack every time we make an edit in our code. Let's do that. Cool. So now when we refresh the page, it shows up.
Yeah, that's weird.
If we have to if we have to make it, oh say, oh I want to make another change. I spelled Alex's name wrong. It's silly me. We have to go back in here. Run npx webpack again. And now it's done.
Hey Shannon, why is it that when I made React apps in the past, I never used npx webpack, only npm init, npm install?
Well, we'll get to that right now. So, you might notice that's pretty inefficient. We don't really want to... Okay, that's pretty efficient. We really don't want to be running npx webpack, waiting a few seconds, refreshing the page every time. So, that's why we, the staff, have set up something called webpack and battle tree. Can you just like... Okay. Cool. And I'll explain what these things are. Right now, they might not even seem like English words. It's fine. So, first thing we're going to do, I'm going to first explain what Webpack and Babel does. Webpack and Babel, these are tools that turn your React code into something that your browser can understand. So if you try to feed your browser the weird React things we just coded, it's not going to understand what to render at all. It's going to be angry at you. So we've set up in your configs already Webpack and Babel. So if we can all go to step 1, npm install, and we'll all take a look at the Webpack config file together.
Hey Shannon, after this step, can we go back and review the code that we just put in app and read one more time?
Sure. The code should be up here. Those of you who need it.
Do I have to?
Yeah. Okay, so just a quick review. Right now, I had to import greet up there because app has no idea what greet is. And because I exported it, I export default greet here. That's how I can just toss it over into the app. And I included 3 greets wrapped in a div and passed it into the prop with a field called text. And I have 3 of them here, hard-coded, Aya, Alex, hi, and bye. And those are passed down into greet, which is shown on the right side of the screen. And all it does is returns this.props.text. And if you can see, because I use super up there, I now have access to the props that we just got passed down. And this.props.text, all these greet components take care of themselves. And that's what's nice about React. So we'll have 3 greet components. One of them will have Aya, Alex, other one hi, other one bye, because we have that.
Shannon, do you want to draw the component structure on the board with the props being passed?
Okay.
No, you put this button.
I've never done.
Oh, that's the wrong button. Right. It's like the big red one. Stop. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Wow. What the? Okay. Wait, this is confusing. Okay. All of these are the same.
Where do they come from, Shannon?
And they all came from the parent.
Nice.
Yeah.
Also, there's not supposed to be a space between step and 1. Just FYI.
I'm sorry.
It's just step 1.
Yeah.
That's our fault.
Okay. Can you get a thumbs up, thumbs down if you've gotten this step? Okay, that's good. All right. So, I'm going to go back to the slide. So, let's all look inside webpack.config.js. So, we're not going to get too much into detail. I just want to give a little overview right now. All Webpack did, if you notice when you ran npx webpack, something was created in your dist folder, bundle.js. And what Webpack and Bundle does, it just takes all of that React code you're in, shoves it into, bundles it, and if you can see in index.html, there's a script source there. And you can see the kind of file path is bundle.js. So that's how those things are connected. So, okay, that is Webpack and Bundle. So we also set up something for you called React Hot Loader. And what React Hot Loader does, whenever you save your code, the screen will just automatically refresh with your changes. And to do that, let's all try that right now. Let's all go to your terminal. I hope you've all npm installed. And you're going to run npm run dev. After you do that, go to localhost 5000, try playing around, make some changes in your code, and the page will automatically refresh without you having to do anything. Can you get a thumbs up, thumbs down to see if you guys got into the step?
If you guys are having trouble.
If you're having trouble, the staff will help
I will
you.
come help you.
Just raise your hand.
Yeah, because step one.
Step one's broken.
Remove the space.
Step one has comments inside Greek. So they can't. This is step two.
Messed up.
Did you not?
Yeah.
Right now I'm looking.
Not that long.
Oh, that was.
Alright, everyone chill. It'll be okay. We messed up.
Did you do?
It's okay, guys. We'll figure it out.
Oh, now mine's also that.
So, okay, what happened is your next step,
It should be.
you guys are going to do some more funky stuff in React, and then we filled in part of the syntax for you. But unfortunately, that means it's broken. Are you just going to push a new branch, Jeremy? You just override it.
I'm just gonna push a new change to step one.
To that step.
So what? Yeah, then they can pull.
Push it 0.5.
Oh no, this is step one.
This is step
So
one.
1.5. Or two. Or just push over step one.
Just push over step 1. Yeah, okay. But then you need a function in
I mean, we can.
We'll just comment it out.
Okay.
Well, it'll still be there.
Do not worry. The change is coming through the power of Git.
That's fine, you can do that now.
Yeah.
Just kill those, yeah.
Okay.
I'll just make a new branch.
You could. You could. Add it. You'd probably learn something.
Wait, make sure it works.
And just put it on. Okay?
Yeah.
Alright guys, hang tight. It'll be good. Shannon, what branch are you pushing to?
There's no reason to keep step one. Just override it.
No, there's a reason to
We'll make a new branch.
Okay.
Make a new branch.
Just make it.
Let me make sure this works.
It's only 0.5.
Ooh.
What are you gonna do? Oh, what are you gonna call? There's no return yet.
Oh shit.
Alright, while she's doing this, does anyone have any high-level conceptual
Yeah.
questions about React?
Is anyone confused? Yes. That's a really good question. So, component mount is one of the really important methods that we talked about in my lecture, right? But sometimes we don't need to do anything when the component mounts. So if we're not doing anything, we're just going to leave it out. So you could put an empty component mount. It just won't do it. Right? So if we commonly, for very complicated React components, we'll have a pretty full component mount. But for this case, it's just empty, so we leave it out. Good question. Anything else? How's everybody feeling about React? Give me like a thumbs up to thumbs down how well you guys are feeling about it. So I see a lot of no thumbs. And that concerns me. But 45 degrees, okay, I'll take it. I'll take it. Is anyone else confused on anything to do with React? Good time for questions, Alright. Okay, well hang tight.
There we go. Got it. Are you starting 8:56?
Yeah, I am.
Alright guys, so you're going to check out a new branch, and there's instructions here. Just so we're not like completely losing you. What's going on here is going to pull. If you remember what that does, it gets the latest changes from the server. We just push some changes to the server, so that's why you're doing that. That's a bad place to put it.
Sorry.
You can't see it.
My bad.
And then you're going to check out a new branch we created called step half, because it's between the step that we were going to. So yeah. All right, do that. And raise your hand if you're having issues with that.
Yeah, sorry we messed up the branches, guys. Raise your hand if you're having trouble. We'll come around and fix it.
Make sure you MKM install as well.
Half spec, step half, not matching the files.
Wait, when are we
Raise your hand if you have trouble making it work.
Step half did not match any files.
Okay.
Alright. Raise your hand if you're having trouble getting to step half.
Wait, is it?
Make sure you do a get pull first.
A what?
get pulled?
Did you do this?
What?
Type in get pulled.
Did you get pulled? Alright, yeah, you guys should get pulled. Git pulling is good for you. It updates your Git repository. And then you're happy, because now it has all your branches.
Alright, raise your hand if you still need help. Good.
I got it. You guys are doing great. React is hard. You guys are awesome.
This is the hardest part.
The hardest part when your code breaks.
Oh! Wait, I think I went to the wrong. I didn't even type this.
Anyone else stuck? You guys are all good? Figure it out? Yeah? Got it? Oh, got it? Great work, guys. Can we get like a thumbs up if you got it? And raise your hand if you're stuck. Goodbye. Okay. We'll give it like 2 more minutes. Sorry for the difficulties, guys.
You should really rename it. You should rename it.
No.
What's the name again?
Right there, yeah.
And this is like a repository to save. Wait, you're right. Why is this called like this?
I don't know.
Raise your hand if you have any issues.
So just to recap of what we've done, this new branch has been working Webpack and Babel and hot loading and all those things. And don't worry if you guys don't understand what those things are yet. They're like just config stuff, and we've set that up for you already. If you want to get into more detail to discuss with us, you can post them piazza, come to office hours, and we'd be happy to explain it to you. So I'm going to just demonstrate what this new branch should do on step half. So if I make a change, right now you can see it has this. Let's like make a change. Let's add some exclamation marks. See? Automatically appears on the screen. So this server thing that we're running on localhost 5000, which you notice is a little different because you've usually been running things on 3000. So I want to repeat something to you that's very important, and I want you to repeat it all with me. Oh no. Wow. Alright. This server is not your Express server. So repeat it with me. Not your Express 5000. That's usually what you do dev on. The only purpose of that Webpack dev server that we're doing, all it does is refresh your code. That's all it does. You cannot send it backend API requests. And Express Server, you notice our app has no backend right now. So if you try to do backend stuff with localhost 5000, it'll get mad. So, quick question. What port is the Webpack dev server run on?
5,000.
5000. Great. What about the Express server?
3,000.
Good. Nice. Alright. So now that we've got that clear, we can move on to the next step. That the Webpack dev server is not what?
It's not your
Yeah. Good. Cool. So we're gonna learn how to add state to our components, and that's what's gonna allow us to change and toggle the exclamation marks. So let's go to app.js. So pop quiz. Where should we initialize the state? Anyone know? Good. Constructor. We do it inside constructor because that's called when the component's first created. So I want you all to add this into your code in app.js. And after you do this with a partner, discuss what kind of field should this state have to hold this new feature we're gonna do, the toggling exclamation marks. So work with your neighbors around you, discuss, look over your phone.
Is exclaiming.
Work with your partner, guys. Get some help. React is hard. We do it in groups.
Yes.
Yes, Shannon and I write React in groups.
Why did you just tell me? Yes. Wait, what?
See, how are you supposed to know that?
Is there a comma? No, I guess that's just an object. Okay.
I'll tell you that.
Okay. So anyone have any ideas what field the state should have? Anyone? Yeah, exactly. We want to have a boolean value to tell it if we have question marks or if we shouldn't. So I just initialized something called if excited, and I initialized it to true. So if you can all add that to your code. So now I want you to discuss with people around you. How can we inform Brie about the state in the app? Right now, it always renders the text no matter what, with no exclamation marks at all. So discuss with the people around you, how can we do this? And there's like a hint up there.
Okay, wait. Let's think about this. How can we inform Let's call it. How about that?
What?
call the reason tell it. Tell it to excited.
So, yeah. How do we inform grade about the state now? Does anyone know? Want to give this a shot? I'll give you a hint. We can pass it in. So let's take a look at our Greek component here. We pass down text from app. Hello as text to app. We can do the exact same thing for our Boolean value. And what we're going to do is give it any name we want. It's excited. I just set it to the same name. And because that is not, it's excited is like an attribute, right? So because this let's say is excited, that's not HTML, we have to wrap that into curly braces. So if you all can add that to your code right now.
Hey Shannon, why should we use React.js? Oh, when? When should we use React.js?
Why not just use JS?
Well, okay. So we're asking when should we use React to write our code and not just vanilla JavaScript? Well, React has a lot of good points that like Alex brought up earlier, right? It's fast, so it's really scalable. If you want to build a big app, you want something that's fast, it can do that for you because it smartly re-renders your components. It's readable, iterating on another one of his points, because we force everything to be in its own components. It has a little more sense of order to it than like regular JavaScript. And remember in Caplet, there's like a lot of lines of code to make story DOM objects and those function. But in React, we can just make them components instead. And do you have anything to add?
So React is great when you're dealing, like even Caplet, right? It's like a pretty simple app, right? You have a feed, you have a profile, right? That's like kind of it, right? Okay, I'm well, anyways, so the point is, React is really good when you have a lot of moving parts in your app, right? And you want to keep things kind of separate in their own logic, and you want to have better organization. That's probably your primary motivation. A lot of companies use React because it's really fast, and it's just like modern, right? So like, if we have time, we'll show you guys an example later of why React is like really good for rendering. But you should use React also because it will help you get internships. Yeah.
Also, by the way, a lot of this that we're saying about React is true for a lot of front-end frameworks. Like, the benefits of React is similar to the benefits of a lot of different front-end frameworks. If you guys have heard of things like Angular, or Vue, or Ember, like these are all just like buzzwords in like web development that are all just similar front-end frameworks that often organize your code by turning it into components that you can reuse and like be able to insert JavaScript and other like interactive things directly into your HTML. These are common features of front-end frameworks. And so we're teaching you React. It's one of the most popular ones, and it's a very good one. But if you are curious, there are other alternatives out there, such as things like Angular, Ember, Vue, etc.
Yeah, Rupai is right. There's a lot of really nice front-end frameworks that exist. So Angular was super hyped like a few years ago, and now people are like hyping about React. I don't know. It's a good idea to kind of like, yeah. I don't know what the hype is about. Like, are people hype about Vue? I'm not sure. In China, they're really hyped about Vue. And in 617, they're really hyped about Vue. Emily, what do you think of Vue?
It's okay.
Yeah, well, do you want a framework that's okay, or do you want... but no, they're right. Like there's a lot of really nice front-end frameworks out there. React is one of them that is used by a lot of companies, and that's why we're teaching it to you. That doesn't mean you necessarily have to use it in your own app, right? It's good to know, and you can build your app in React. Don't want to discourage you, but yeah, it's used mostly in industry.
So, just catching up. Now you can check out the step 1, and there should be no fires.
Well, it won't work because they haven't.
Well, yeah.
It's not supposed to.
This is for the next step. So, yeah, the code should be. Andrew. You're fired. Andrew.
Too bad. We hope you guys are enjoying this React lecture.
Can I get a thumbs up, thumbs down if you guys are able to do this? Great. Okay. So.
When you guys are done checking out step 1, why don't you look up at Shannon so she knows like kind of when to move on. And if you're stuck, you can raise your hand and some staff will come help you.
Okay. Cool. So remember to pass the props down in their code. We discussed this earlier, but make sure after you check out the step 1 to add this into your code. Andrew. So, and look up when you're done.
Shannon, where is the text state defined for the app component?
Oh, so if you remember, this .props.text is passed in. This is in the app component right now, right? It's being passed in from app as a prop because everything goes down. Okay, so let's continue. Andrew. Okay. So now we're going to do conditional rendering in JJ. So right now, all our code does, it's always going to render question marks no matter what. That's not exactly what I want. We wanted to do, if exercise is true, we wanted to do this. If not, we wanted to do that. So that's conditional rendering. And in step 1, you should have some code there already that tells you, with comments telling you where to fill it. Yeah. So right now, can you work with a partner or your neighbors around you to fill in the code in Greek.js, the if-else statement we have for you there?
So guys, for CSS, you can define, so you know how do we add CSS in HTML? Does anyone know? Do you remember? Yeah, you have a class, right? So you do like class equals something, right? And then you define it in your CSS, right? Dot something, and then you put some nice styling there. In React, what we do is we do the exact same thing, except we put class name instead. And the reason that is because there's already a keyword class in ES6 JavaScript, right? Because class is a word for like a class, right? Like an object-oriented class. So instead we say class name, but otherwise it's exactly the same. So yeah, you can define your CSS. And you'll see more of this tomorrow when we build a more spicy React. Alright, how's everyone doing? Did you guys manage to pass the props down? Everyone good? Give me a thumbs. Give me a thumbs. Okay, we'll take a little bit more time. Don't worry if you're already done. Just take a quick breather. React can be kind of confusing, so we want to make sure we go slow so everybody has a chance to catch up. Shannon's going to implement.
Can you show thumbs up, thumbs down if you guys are able to, if you're able to complete this step?
If you're stuck, can you raise your hand? We'll come help you.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, this is kind of confusing, so.
Yeah.
Good.
So right now, if you go to localhost 5000, you'll see that the question marks are always there. So you might notice that this is a pretty large chunk of code to do one conditional statement. It's pretty long. And can anyone does anyone know like a way we can maybe do this in like one line? It's okay if you guys don't?
Ternary operator.
Yeah, exactly. So we can do all of this in one line with something called a ternary operator. And that's not something unique to React. So I'll just show you guys a condensed version of the solution and I'll explain. So what a ternary operator is basically, if you can see here, we have a condition. This.props is excited. That's either true or it's false. Followed by that is a question mark. After the question mark, the first expression is what's executed if that condition is true. Following that, we have a colon. After the colon, we have an expression, and that's executed if it's false. So breaking this down, we have this.props.text, which is always going to be rendered no matter what. That's why you have that there. And whether we run question marks or not is based on the condition if it's excited or not. And in our case, when we're running on localhost 5000, the question marks are always there because we've initialized them to true and state, and we haven't defined any functions right now to change the state. So if everyone wants to put this in their code instead, to make, instead of the if else statement, go ahead and do that now.
My localhost 5000 is blank. Can somebody come tell me why that is?
Yes, we'll be there in 1 second.
Thank you. Oh. Oh, wait, back to
I'm coming.
It's not that work that. I don't know.
You open my inspector?
So it's this is supposed to be.
So console see what we got. There's a lot of errors.
Run dev. Dark web pack again.
Oh yes, the return needs to kind of not return. Right, just get off. Is it done?
Yeah, I did not follow the lecture.
Don't worry. Oh, you want to just hop over? Yeah, sorry, I might just hop over. Sorry. Hello, friend. What's going on?
I'm going to find out if this works.
Oh, thank you.
Nope.
Let's take a look at Inspector. Might. Take a look at console. Like, it's so cool. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Cannot recompile the concept. Let's take a go back to the okay, let's go back to that. Ah, yes, you didn't initialize your state.
What? Oh, there it is.
Constructor.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So you need to do this dot state equals and open an object.
Yeah, I got you now.
All right, guys, how we doing? Anyone else so stuck? You guys are doing great. React is sometimes confusing. I promise to make it get back to you in a second. Thank you. Blank. Inspector.
Hey.
If your localhost 5000 is blank, try seeing if you remember defining the state in app.js in the previous step.
Yeah, you do need a constructor.
As in, you have to define that state in app.js in that constructor.
Are you still stuck down there? Over here? your neighbor and try to get help from your friends, from your friendos, and hopefully you guys.
So we're going to move on now. So, as of now, make sure that whatever your local host is, exclamation marks are showing up.
Everyone's good?
And you get thumbs up, thumbs down to see if you're...
Thumbs up, thumbs down. Wow, I see lots of thumbs up. This is good news. Alright.
Great. Cool. So now we notice because the questions are always there. That's because we haven't actually had any way to change the state yet. So that's what we're going to be doing at this next step. Okay. If you notice in FJS, we have an empty function for you. It's called onKeyDown. And if you remember in the demo, we toggle the state, toggle the exclamation marks by pressing the D key. And well, now I want you guys to work with your neighbors, fill out this function, and try to change the state to flip the state when the key is D. And just as a hint, you can get what key is pressed with event.key. So work with the people around you, and yeah.
Turn to your friendos, guys. This is be a little bit. Wait, I know. I don't know why 170 is on blue. That's a great question. Why is 170 on blue? I don't know what it's like. That's really well, like, yeah, that's true. Like, yeah, would you say? We'll just do like vanilla JavaScript. Yeah, what's your Elm talk? Hey, want to get an Elm talk?
It's like a functional language.
So it's like Pascal?
You'll never get a runtime error. And the compiler does all the work for you.
There you go, for real. When you guys are done, can you like look up or something so we know that you're done? But no rush, you know.
Okay. Okay. So now that you guys have sort of implemented the onKeyDown functions, it's fine if you're not. We're going to come back to that later. So let's see. Some of you might have tried to do this, and this is not correct for just one reason. This is not how you change a state. We can't just write it again. So we have to use a React function called this.setState. And well, this is wrong. Don't ever do this. It will never work. Trust me. So the correct way to change a state, and you should all add this to your code right now, is this.setState. Then we said toggle it is excited, and we put the expression up there to put the opposite as you want. So basically the top. So go ahead and put this in your code.
Yeah. That's all right. Bring It's basically
In that case, the less you can I press E, nothing's happening. And also I have it do within a console.log event key. And it's not logging anything here. And it's not logging anything.
Can they get a thumbs up, thumbs down? Who's put this in their code yet? Alright, nope.
By the way, it's not going to work.
It's not gonna work yet. We're not done yet.
we're not done yet.
We're not done yet. Don't freak out.
Don't worry,
Nothing's
guys.
changing.
It's because on key down hasn't been called yet, right? So we're gonna call it in a second. Don't worry. Oh no. Yeah, you wish, dude. We had to deal with peasant things like on key. That's peasant. You only worry about red.
Okay, so now you're wondering, this function's going to be kind of useless if we're not calling it anywhere, right? So, what do we do with this on key down function? Well, you guys remember Catbook from last week? We did a workshop where we had this line coded here. New story submit, add event listener, click, and then the function. So, bringing this down, when we did Catbook, the type of event was click because we were submitting something. We clicked. And these are some just examples of types of events you can put into that parameter. The function we called submit story handler, we defined that in, it's not shown here, but that was a function we defined. And basically, on this object, new story submit, when we click, we will call this function submit story handler. So, in our case, we want to do document.addEventListener because right now we're not on the story DOM or anything. We're going to do document. And we're going to fill in this code. So can anyone tell me what type of event that we're doing when we press our keys?
Key press.
Key down. Key down, but more efficient key down. And what function should we call this event? On key down. Great. So, now that we've written this line, where do you think we should put this line? Component did mount. Good. Alright. So, it's in component did mount because we can only do things to it. We can only click it. We can only press it when it's actually shown on the screen. So, I want you all to finish this, add this line of code into app.js. And I want work with your friends, work with it. Yeah.
Semicolons are good, guys. Just FYI. There's a semicolon.
So, look up when you're done. If this is implemented correctly, your localhost 5000 should be working just like the demo.
But this should happen. I'm getting that on key down is not defined. Take a look. This on key down.
Yeah, because it's a function that is divided down for that safer for
Hey. Keep down his hat. Oh, this. Use this style. My sentence exactly. Because that's exactly what I did.
So remember when we defined onKeyDown as a class function? If you want to refer to it into this function as the second parameter, you need to use this before. So this dot onKeyDown. And Alex, if you remember a while ago, Alex explained the difference why we need to do that. So make sure when you refer to that function you define, you do this dot onKeyDown.
Yeah.
Can I get a thumbs up, thumbs down to see who's got this working? Okay, so this is the solution. Can you do this?
Yeah, you need to press.
So if you're running it already, local 5000, the app is pretty much complete. And if you guys have some errors in code, you can check out to the complete branch and run it, and it should work. So yeah, conclusion, React is cool. Tomorrow we'll be doing a game with React. So yeah. Come.
All right. Does anyone have any last questions? Does anyone have any questions on React? Because we know it's a lot to throw at once. If you do, you can stay after. So tomorrow, what we're going to do is we're going to build a game in React. So it's going to be a little bit more complex. It'll have a real Express backend, which is not your development server, right, guys? We learned that today. So yeah, cross now. So we'll learn that tomorrow. So we'll see you guys all tomorrow. Great job today.
And one last thing.
One last thing.
So today it's the birthday of one of the members on staff. So everyone sing happy birthday to